Thanks, Nazar. And yeah, I'm sure I know a few of you have been on these calls before, and some new people as well. So let's get started. So in preparing for the call, Nazar, as you know me, I always want to provide timely information, right? Not just information that they might use sometime. So I wanted to just bring it down to a lot of the things I'm hearing and seeing in today's market. And honestly, how I think you have to act differently. The market we were in, during COVID and that crazy market where things were, you got a client, you had to act very quickly, very fast. Houses were selling in hours, I think not even days back then. But we're in a totally different market. And I want to share with you how your behaviors have to change a little bit to succeed in this market. So first, you got to understand what's the biggest challenge that a client is having right now in today's environment, and what is their experience in maybe thinking about buying or selling a home. And I'll give you the answer. The answer is they're full of uncertainty.
Recording in progress.
They're definitely full of uncertainty right now. So the reason I bring that up is because interest rates, right, have been fluctuating up and down. We had no inventory, and then for a short window, we had some inventory, and then it dried up again because a lot of the sellers who have low interest rates don't want to put their house on the market and move into a house with a much higher interest rate on there. So unfortunately for you guys or any salesperson, there's a lot of uncertainty in the air. It's known as a trust killer. So your clients don't know what to believe anymore. They don't know what's going to happen with interest rates, and they're hearing all this mixed news. How many times on the news have we heard that someone is predicting that there's a bubble, right? The markets are going to crash, and real estate's going to be horrible like it was back in the crash of 07, 08 over there. The fact of the matter is, it's really not true, in my opinion. We have more equity in homes than we've ever had in this country, and there's a whole bunch of other factors that say the market's not going to crash, but some of your consumers have heard it's going to crash, so they're freaked out a little bit. It's now the right time to buy. Same with interest rates. We heard they're going to come down. So we've got to work on. The first thing you need to do, I will share with you, is not to try to sell a home to anybody, is you got to try to build trust with them. That's what I'm going to teach you guys today on how to do that a lot more effectively than you're probably doing now. So step one in developing trust is you've got to find out where your client is, or this new lead that you have today. Where are they in their journey to potentially buy a home? If you want to write this down, I will tell you they're going to be in one of three stages, and I'll give you the details to help you identify what stage they're in. Then I'll give you today the right questions to ask that will help you build trust versus scare a client away because you're being too aggressive in a market with a lot of uncertainty. So the first lead that you might get, and the stage they may be in, we're going to call it, they're just thinking about buying a house. Right? Not every person that you bump into is ready to buy a house today or next week. Everyone, myself included, Nazar, I'm sure, you get an idea that, you know what, hey, maybe we'll buy a house a couple months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, but they're going to have to do some research, right? They're going to think about it some more. So the first stage is they're thinking about buying a house. Do you want to say, hey, how many bedrooms you need? How many bathrooms you need? How much are you qualified? Let's go look at some houses today, tomorrow, right? You're going to scare that client away because they need information at this point. They need to figure out if this is something that they may or may not want to do down the road. So if you get a client, before you start interrogating them with, LP mama type questions and trying to close them, the right question to ask someone when you initially meet them is, not what do they want to buy, but why. Write this down. So what has you interested in potentially buying a house in the first place? You've got to learn the client's backstory, right? Before you try to close them or sell them, you want to know what has them interested first in buying a home potentially, or if you're working with sellers, selling their home on there. If you know their backstory, they'll feel much more understood, that you know their situation, and then you could ask the right questions, and then can develop a timeline when you understand why they have this idea in the first place about buying a home. So first thing, if they're thinking about a house, you ask them, well, that's great. Let me give you an example. I learned this actually from Dale Archdeacon Nazar at the event. here's a most common mistake. If you get someone who's thinking about buying a house, when you talk in future tense, meaning how many bedrooms do you want? When do you want to close on this house? When do you want to, and you're talking in the future tense to someone, it will stress them out. When you have someone who's thinking about buying a house, you want to talk in current tense. You want to talk about today and what they have going on, not trying to sell them down the road. So we speak in current tense, not future tense, with someone who's thinking about buying a home. All right, so now they've thought about it. I'll write this down if you want. When they're thinking, I'll give you the time frame that this thinking could happen. It's going to be 91 days to 24 months. That's how long the average buyer may think about buying a house before they're ready to go looking at homes, or maybe consider writing an offer on a home. So you got to pay the patience game. As a matter of fact, I'll share something else with you that I think is really important, especially if you're newer in sales. Unfortunately, Nazar, when you get your license, they call you a salesperson, right? And we start to act like we're selling things. Let me give you the good news, bad news. You're not selling anything. A buyer will not buy a home until they're ready to. And our job, they're not going to buy a house until they're ready to. And if you're working with sellers, they're not going to list their home until they're ready to list it. So our job is to advise them and help them achieve their goals, not try to close them and sell them. So what I always like to tell agents, Nazar, is that they're not in the sales business, they're in the relationship business. If you change this perspective, instead of trying to sell them, but build trust with them in an environment with a lot of uncertainty, build a relationship with them, you're going to be a hell of a lot more successful. I promise you, right? So I had this question actually from a newer agent I'll share just this week. He's like, well, I have a lead, but how do I build a relationship, right? Because we're so geared with what are the right questions to ask them as far as, what they're looking for and how to handle the objection. So I gave him this example, which maybe it'll help you guys as well. So I said, his name was Tim. I said, Tim, what would you do if a new neighbor moved into your block, on your block, a couple doors down, and seemed like the kind of guy, couple, whatever it is, that you'd like to get to know better? How would you treat them? And he was like, oh, I would go over, maybe I would invite them out to go, for a bite to eat or play some golf, right? And he's building a relationship with the neighbor. This is the same things you want to do with your clients. Instead of trying to close them and looking at them more as a commission check, right? Is how do you build a relationship with them? That's the goal, because people will do business with people, you've heard this 100 times, that they know, like, and then most importantly, I'm talking a lot about trust today. So I think in this market, you've got to slow it down and educate the client, because they've heard a lot of I would say not accurate information between social and the news. I see this stuff every day. So first is slow it down, find out what they're looking for, right? Understand what they're trying to accomplish, and then educate them, right? You want to control the narrative of what's really happening, because I'm going to tell you they're hearing a lot of misinformation. So that's step one. So we're going to ask them again in step one. So why are you considering even buying or selling a house here? And here's a great follow-up question that will help you get a lot more information. And I'll share with you, the more information you get about your client, the easier it is to help them buy or help them sell. So whenever I ask a client, so Nazar, tell me, what got you interested in maybe buying a house here in our community or selling your house here in our community? They give me a little information, and I was like, oh, that's so interesting. Here's the hook. Tell me more about that. Right? Instead of jumping right in, right, and trying to close them, I get some information, and then I seem very interested in them and what they're trying to accomplish. And I say very empathetically, wow, Nazar, that's great. Can you tell me a little more about that? Right? Why now, or why this town, or why this school district, right? And the more, this is why it's imperative. I don't know about the agents on this call, you've got to use your CRM more. Right? So while I'm asking these questions, I'm putting notes in there, because remember what I told you about this? I'm thinking to buy buyer, 91 to 2 years. You think you're going to remember all the answers to your questions of why they're coming to the area, or when you ask them to tell you more about their situation? You need to put that in your CRM, because you are not going to remember 3 months, 6 months, a year from now, the answers. But imagine if you did use your CRM more effectively, and then a year from now, you go to a follow-up call and you knew exactly why they were moving. And maybe they told you some of the family members' names, right? Maybe it was because their son or daughter was, I don't know, going to attend a school, right? And I said, hey, Nazar, right? Your son, Bobby, right? Whatever the case may be. How's he doing? Is he still interested in going to the school? Whatever the case may be. And then boom, they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you remembered that. And they will look at you totally different than, hey, you ready to buy a house yet? Right? And you know nothing about them, right? Much, much better way to approach the client. All right, that was step one. So step two in building trust and serving your client, in my opinion, at a higher level, is they're now going to do something where they're going to start doing more serious research into, now they decided they were thinking about buying, now they're pretty sure they want to buy. They're not necessarily ready to maybe write an offer yet, but you know what? They've looked around, they kind of think this could work for one reason or another. And in this phase, the second step of buying a home, they're going to do what? What's the fundamental difference in what they're doing now? The fundamental difference is they're going to be calling you to actually go look at homes, right? They're going to say, hey, me and my other person involved in this transaction, we're going to want to see some homes, right? Maybe on their own, they might be attending open houses, you'll notice, on a regular basis. What's good to know here is some of the NAR data behind their behaviors, and this will help you to understand where they are in step two. So if you don't know, NAR has shared with us the average consumer will look at approximately 10 homes. 10 homes. So here's a great question to ask a buyer next time you meet with them. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, so on your journey to potentially buying a home here in our community, how many homes have you seen so far? So if they tell me 0, you know what? They're probably still thinking about it or maybe just starting to do some research. If they look at 1 or 2 homes, right? I know they're definitely in that second step of buying a home, but in the infancy stages, right? Just 1 or 2, I know they're probably going to want to see a few more before they're comfortable enough to actually purchase one of these homes on there. So when we get to step 2, what if they told me 10 homes, right? Wow. In my opinion, you have a hot buyer on your hands, right? They've done their research. They've kind of understood the market. They've seen some homes that maybe didn't work for them. They've really got it narrowed down. I would be a lot more aggressive, right, in helping that person than the one who maybe hasn't seen any houses or 1 home. But in step 2, I always hear fundamentally the question that's answered incorrectly. So the question that you want to ask in step 2 is, well, I'll give you the question I hear incorrectly, and then I'll give you the correct one. So the question that I hear most often that's incorrect is, oh, so you want to buy a home. What are you looking for? What do you need? How many bedrooms? This is the incorrect question in step 2. So step 2, I told you the best question to ask initially is, how many homes have you seen? If they give you any number, 1, 2, 5, 10, 20, I don't care. The next question, write this down. Oh, so Rochelle, you've seen 5 homes so far. So tell me, why weren't those 5 homes a good fit for you? First, before you try to sell them something, it's much easier to find out what they don't want. Maybe the homes needed too much work, right? They want something that they learn now, move-in condition. I'll give you a story about Lisa and I, actually, is that when we were considering moving to Las Vegas, we had a ranch home that we owned in California, and we liked that floor plan of just having everything on one level. So we start looking at homes in Vegas, and if you don't know, the homes in Vegas, I would say 80–90% are all 2-story homes. Very few homes here are ranch style. Imagine Nazar, if my realtor here didn't tell me what we didn't want, just set me up on the MLS search and started sending 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes to Lisa and I. 80–90% of them would be 2 stories. Would I feel that agent understood what Lisa and I were looking for? No, not at all. What if that agent only sent me 1-story homes because they knew we did not want 2 stories? Would I feel that agent understood us? Heck yeah, heck yeah. So the question is not what do you want? What have you eliminated? What kind of home, what areas, whatever it is that they've eliminated, they will feel a lot more understood. Again, just like in step one, the more understood they feel, the more likelihood they want to work with you, because the other agents do not usually ask that question. Also, I'll give you another NAR statistic if you don't know. As I hear this possession all the time, Nazar, where this is my buyer, this is my lead. Let me give you some bad news. You want to take a guess on the average number of agents your buyer is communicating with at any given time, especially as they go through step two and potentially into the next step, step three, I'm going to teach you about in a second. Any idea? The answer is 10. So you could be very, very easily one of 9 agents that they're communicating with, and you're calling them my buyer. So this is why it's so important to build trust, because at the end of the day, no matter how many agents have shown them a home, eventually they're going to find one on Zillow, your website, or MLS, wherever they're looking, like, oh my gosh, we looked at a bunch of homes. This is the home. We know this is the home. Quick, let's call our agent. Who are they going to call out of those 10 agents? It's the one that feels most understood and the one that's built the biggest relationship and the one they trust the most. So stop selling and build more relationship if you want that call and not your competitor. Because what I always have said about real estate, it's a zero-sum game. What if your name is the second name that they think of, not the first? Guess how much commission you get? 0. Big fat 0, guys. So you've got to be the first name. Imagine if you took my advice and in your notes in your CRM, you're mentioning their children's names or dogs' names or partner's name, right? Whatever the case may be. You think they'll like you and trust you more? Heck yeah. Heck yeah. So be better at that game, because you are one of 10 people, NAR tells us. So build more trust and relationship by asking them, first of all, what they're looking for, and then you could help them serve them. And by the way, this will save you a lot of time sometimes by finding out what they don't want. So you're not setting up searches and tours with homes that you didn't know they didn't want because you didn't ask. And then you can then ask them, your typical LP Mama, ALM, right? All those questions, I would say. Bedrooms, bathrooms. Once you figure out what they don't want, and then you could go start looking for what they might want on there. Okay, so let's go to next step, step 3. So we've got step 1. I'll go over it again if you've tuned in late. Step 1 is they're thinking about buying a house. So stop trying to close them and find out why they're thinking about looking for the house. And learn as much as you can about them, asking them a lot of open-ended questions about their situation, who's going to be involved, right? And the more they share, I'll give you some other good news if you take my advice today. Once they tell you their backstory and they give you all their information, you think they want to tell that same story to 9 other agents? I will tell you no. If you've asked the right questions and they're comfortable with you and they're giving you all the information, especially I'll share, if you can find out if there's some challenge with their story about why they might be buying a home. Let's just say they're going through a divorce, right? The divorce rate's over 50% in this country. And a lot of people, they split up and they're going to have to find new homes. Imagine if that consumer came to you and they gave you the story, oh my gosh, poor me, and I was married for all these years or whatever, and now I'm getting divorced, and right? Do you think they want to tell 9 other agents that sad story? No. They will be much more loyal to you if you can get the story out of them. But if they never shared that story with you and you don't even know they're going through that situation, you think you're handling their transaction or helping them most effectively? No. You've got to, I'll give you another ism, if you will. You've got to meet your clients where they are, not where you are, right? And sometimes what I see in this market is I've heard markets around this country are down as much as 40%, which probably means you are selling less homes. So what happens, you're making less money, you get more aggressive. You get more salesy because you need that check. You want that check. The harder you push, I'll give you the bad news, the less sales you're going to have, not the more sales you have. So try not to change the only one thing you could change, actually, let me share this with you. If your market is down 40%, Nazar, I'm going to tell you, good news, bad news, there's only one way to hit your goal this year. There's only one way to maintain your income. You've got to make 40% more calls. You got to meet 40% more people, because the buyer of today is not like the buyer of a couple of years ago that's going to say, hey, I'm ready to buy, get in the car, write an offer in a couple of hours. they're going to hear a lot more information on the news, like I said earlier, and social media, and they're going to be much slower to maybe transact. They're going to need more time to think about it, if you will. And if you push them, you'll be pushing them away, not helping them to buy or helping them to sell, which is your primary goal in working with a client. All right, number 3. Oh, let me help you with number 2. I didn't give you the time frame. So number 2, when they are in this, when we're doing their research and now they've kind of committed to this is something they want to do, this will be somewhere between 31 and 90 days. 31 and 90. Remember I told you they're going to look at approximately 10 houses according to NAR. They might do that in a month or so. They might take up to 3 months, depending on their personality style, depending how much inventory your market has and the type of home they're looking for. So again, I think you got to learn in sales the patience game, right? We always want that sale. We want to close them. We want to write the offer, but you've got to work at the speed of your client. And in this market, I will tell you, everything's just a little bit slower on there. All right, let's go to the third and final stage of how a consumer actually buys a house. And you can see already, I hope, if you're treating all your clients with one approach, how many bedrooms, bathrooms, and when do you want to buy, you're going to be at a rapport with your client, I would say 66% of the time, right? 2 out of 3 times, because there's 3 different steps they could be in, and you're treating them all like this step I'm about to share with you now. This is what I would call the transactional step, right? This is when they've decided, remember step 1, we're thinking, okay, yes, we want to do it. Then there's step 2. Okay, we're thinking, let's go look around, let's online, offline, let's just see what's available and maybe narrow this down a little bit on there. So after that step, they're going to be in step 3. This step, if you want to write down, is going to be 30 days or so, right? This is when the job gets more interesting for you guys. And this is the part you like the best, because let me tell you how you know that they're in step 3, when they're in this ready to transact stage, they're willing to write an offer. Before this point, you may push them, you may want them to, but unless they've seen enough houses, unless you've created enough certainty that this is a good thing for them to do, it's going to help them achieve whatever goals they're trying to achieve, they're not going to be ready to write. So once you're committed to, you're working with a consumer and they're either list with you or buy a house from you, they're ready to write on there. And you know they're going to be in this last phase. So this is why I was telling you earlier, it's imperative you ask better questions, you get more information personally about them, because this transition from doing their research to writing the offer, they're going to wake up one day and you don't know between the 30-day window, what day they're going to decide today's the day and what agent should we call. And every time they go to an open house and sign in, that agent's calling them. Every time they log into a different portal, I don't care if it's Realtor, Redfin, Zillow, whatever, and they register there, some agent's going to be calling them right on there. So you've got to cut through the noise and stand out. I will also, another one of my most favorite things to do when I'm in sales is create differentiation. There are approximately 1.6 million realtors in this country. And you think because you're so enamored by this client, they're a great client, they're going to buy, that you remember everything about them. They're busy. They have lives. They have kids, right? They're talking to 10. I'm always surprised how often the consumer didn't remember me. And I thought, I was so focused on them because I thought I could, help them buy or help them sell. So how do you stand out from those 1.6 million realtors, or even your marketplace, right? There's hundreds, maybe thousands of agents. How do you stand out? How do you become the agent of choice? How do you help them to choose you over the 10 other agents they're most likely communicating with? So create some differentiation, right? Say things the other agents aren't saying. Ask these questions. I will tell you, if you ask these questions and slow down your process, I will guarantee you 99% of agents in your marketplace, they get a lead and they're trying to close them hard. Be the opposite, right? Work on the relationship first. Ask better questions. Ask more questions before you try to sell them something, right? Or list their home. All right, so step 3, they're writing offers. It'll take approximately 30 days. So this is the first time I'll share is when you should be asking the questions that you're most likely asking all along. So now that you've decided you're going to buy a house, now that you've eliminated all these things, because I've asked you what you don't like in a home, because you've seen about 10 of them so far. So what does the ideal home look like? And I'm going to share something interesting, Nazar, that I found through when I was selling real estate that actually surprised me. And after this pattern happened a few times, I realized it wasn't a fluke. And here's the pattern that I noticed. So every buyer you work with is going to give you a laundry list of must-haves and I would like to have, right? They've got to have, usually the bedroom, bathroom count is the must-haves, right? And they might have something like, I don't know, central air conditioning or a pool or a fenced yard if they have dogs as their must-haves. And then they're going to give you that laundry list of, oh yeah, we'd like to have this, that, and the other thing, like the haves. I was surprised, really, really surprised when a couple buyers, I'll give you a story, said, hey, Mike, you know, this house online, we told you we're looking for a gourmet kitchen, and this house online has the best gourmet kitchen, you know, we've ever seen. We want to go take a look at this house. We think this might be the house. And I said, great, let's go take a look at the house. We go in the house and it had the best gourmet kitchen I've ever seen. But then I realized that one of the deal breakers, one of the things they definitely didn't want in a house was to be on a busier road, right? And I noticed this home sits on a double yellow line road, which would indicate, you know what, this road is pretty busy. And of course, I know the marketplace. I know it's fairly busy. So as a good realtor, I educate my clients and I say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I know this is the best kitchen in the world, but I do recall when we met and you told me some of the things that were important to you, because maybe you have children, being on a busy road wasn't a good option for you and you didn't want to buy a home on a busy road. Here's where I got surprised. They will justify the busy road if you find the one thing. They give you a lot of things. I've learned almost every buyer has one thing that's super important. And if you could nail that, everything else that they told you is negotiable. So here's what they would tell me, Nazar. Yeah, Mike, yeah, we know it's kind of busy, but it's not that busy, because their emotional mind wants that kitchen so darn bad, they will eliminate the busy road as an objection to buying the house. So yes, ask them all the questions about what they must have, what they would like to have, and all that good stuff. But more importantly, find the one thing that is most important and find the home that has that feature, and you will be surprised how many of those other things will disappear if you can nail that. And I was always surprised by that because we all get that list, and this has happened to me. Matter of fact, I've had them buy homes like in a different school district in a different town than they told me, because that gourmet kitchen, for example, is the most important thing. And it's just a pattern I've seen over and over. So don't worry about trying to get them everything on the list. If you find the one thing, you will be their agent of choice for sure.
Hey, Mike, on that, do you flat out ask them, like, what is your most important thing? Are you finding that thing through trial and error?
Combination of both. So yeah, it's very good to be direct. I've noticed that they all have, right? In this day and age, I'll share with you, a lot of times they need a home office, right? On there. So having that house that has a space that's, you know, maybe off from the main living area and the bedrooms, so they could work, and it's right, that could be a feature of a home that would be most important to them now. And if not, I listen carefully, right? When we're doing showings and stuff, to what they're pointing out as what's most important, or what, you know, could cause them to purchase a home. And then I start keying in on that and I find other homes. I'll give you a little, one more little pro tip that worked for me. So I know the client, we'll use my kitchen example, right? I know the kitchen is the most important thing for the client. So I'm looking in their given marketplace, town or school district, and there's no house with a kitchen like that in there. But I noticed the neighboring town or school district has the great kitchen, but I know they told me they weren't necessarily interested in that town or school district. So here's my script if you want to steal it. I will tell them, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, you know what? I really just want to understand this kitchen that you've been talking about. And there's a listing that came up recently. I know it's not for you because it's not in that town or school district, but would you be willing to come with me to take a look at the house so you can tell me if this is the kitchen that really fits your needs the best? This way I can maybe find that in the town or school district that you're looking in. And I will tell you, Nazar, I've done this a few times. You show them that house that has the kitchen, even though it's not in the right town or school district, and they see it, this town and school district become negotiable. Well, Mike, you know, this school district's not that bad, right? Or, you know, this town could work too. And because why? Every buyer you're working with doesn't buy on logic, they buy on emotion. And when you can find the right emotional lever to pull, it gets a lot easier. It gets a lot easier on there. Let me continue
Mike,
on.
do you live in a single level or two-story home?
Here's the irony. I live in a 2-story home.
I knew it.
Yeah, Nazar knows me. Let me share with you. As I've gotten older, guys, the number one factor for me in life is convenience. For me, it's convenience. So when we were offered this particular townhome, it's not even a house, Nazar. We were looking for a house. We're in a townhome with stairs. Why did Lisa and I buy this? Because literally across the street from my house is every amenity, store, whatever that Lisa and I could ever dream of. Like, I have a Lifetime Fitness across the street. We have a movie theater. We like movies across the street. My wife can go to Sephora, spin class, Whole Foods, yoga. We have a whole bunch of great restaurants across the street. I will climb stairs and live in a townhouse for that kind of convenience all day long. So, right? If you knew that about me and you were my realtor, I told you 2 stairs. Yeah, you listened to me, but then you say, hey, Mike, I know this house isn't going to work for you. And I see the locations across from everything I ever dreamed about. I will forego the stairs just like your buyer will on there. Let me give you one more ism that I think is important. And it's probably if you understand this and you approach your next client this way, you're gonna be a lot more successful. Is I find that most agents, Nazar, we tell them they're salespeople, we give them the script, and they think that's their job is to start hammering them with these qualifying questions on there. I will tell you that feels like an interrogation to your consumer, and it's not the best way to go. So what I would highly recommend is when you get your next lead, think of that interaction the same way last time you went to your doctor. Right? When you went to your doctor last time, let me tell you what happened. And I want you to create this similar experience for your client, and you'll be a lot more successful. So when you walked in because something was ailing you, right? You went to the doctor. Imagine if you walked into the office and you looked at the doctor looked at you and he said, wow, you don't look good. Here, you need 3 pills. Take these 3 pills and see how they work, and then let me know. How would you feel about that doctor? You'd be a little freaked out. Why? Because he didn't ask you any questions about what was wrong. So what really happens when you go to the doctor before they make any recommendations on what you should do or not do? Oh, Mr. Patient, Mrs. Patient, oh my gosh, what brings you into the office today is always their first question. Is that similar to what has you interested in buying a house? Yes. Number 2, right? Oh, you're not feeling well. How long have you been feeling this way? Is that similar to how long have you been looking for a home, right? Or how many homes have you seen? Very similar question. And what does the doctor continue to do, right? Tell me more about that. Tell me more about it. Tell me more about it. And after he asks a whole bunch of qualifying questions to learn your situation and understand your ailment and how long and all that, then he prescribes his recommendation of, whatever, exercise or pills or whatever the case may be. You need to be more doctor-like, right? Ask a lot more qualifying questions to understand their situation, understand what they're trying to maybe accomplish, and then give your advice. The advice, only about 1 or 2% of the time, I will give you the bad news, is I want to buy a house now. I find nationally for years and years, about 2% max of those leads you're getting are going to need to transact in the next few weeks or so. So that means all the other ones need to be understood. They need to be nurtured a little bit longer. They need more relationship building. They need more trust building in an environment of enormous uncertainty on there. And then
I just want to add real quick, even if you are in that position where you're the doctor and the patient is there and they've got these issues and you run a whole bunch of tests and blood work and all this stuff, guess what they're doing in the background? They're going on their phone and freaking Googling everything that you're saying and second guessing what you're saying until they get to the point where you're congruent with what the general population is also saying or what they find online. And so if you're saying the market's amazing, the market's awesome, and everything else they hear says otherwise, unless they have immense amount of respect and believe in you, they're not going to believe anything you say. So I think that's why from anything you've said today is like, if you cannot establish a friendship and a relationship with them and help them understand that you are the person that has the knowledge, then you're just going to be a door opener and they'll go on to the next person.
Yeah, let me segue from that, Nazar. So write these down. This is imperative that you get this right. Next. So remember I told you the uncertainty, you need to build more trust. Let me give you the 3 levers that will cause you to build trust really quickly or not, if you're not pulling these 3 levers. So these are the 3 things. Now, all buyers will decide whether they like you or not like you on a subconscious level. No one decides consciously if they like you or don't like you. I will promise you, if you do these 3 things really, really well, they will like and trust you, and they will do a lot of business with you. Number 1, most important to the consumer is responsiveness. Speed to lead determines how a client will choose to work with you or not work with you on there, because they're in something called modality, not to get too deep with you guys, but when they wake, remember I told you, and they wake up and they're like, oh, today's the day, we're buying a house. We saw this thing on whatever website, and today's the day, let's call our agent. What happens, Nazar, if they call you and you are not responsive? You take some time to get back to them. How long you think they're going to wait before they call one of the other 9 agents because they love the way this house looks? I will tell you, not long at all. And I'll give you the good news, bad news. You guys are exactly the same. Last time you Googled something and you clicked on a link and the page started to load slowly, how long did you wait for that page to load? Seconds before you clicked on the next link. You're a buyer that you're calling you're a buyer is going to wait not too long to call that next agent if you're not responsive. Now, say you're working with the consumer and they're reaching out with a question, or maybe they want to schedule an appointment, see a home. Same thing. The quicker you respond to them, the more they like you and eventually will trust you. Be more responsive. I'll give you a hack that I use all the time because my schedule, Nazar, as you know, is usually crazy, crazy busy all the time. So when I can't give my other who's reaching out to me the time they deserve, I stall them. And if they reach out with a question, I want to set an appointment, I say, great, I'm either, with a client or, hey, I got your message. Let me check on the status of the house. I'll give them some stall tactic and I'll get back to you. Like, I know I can't converse with them now, but I let them know that they've been heard. I'm working on it. And when I will get back to them. If I do that, they won't call the other agent. If I don't do that, they will call the other agent on there. Number 1, be more responsive. Number 2, Nazar touched on this. You've got to be smart. You got to be knowledgeable. You got to know your stuff. And why? Nazar nailed it. They have Google. How long do you think a buyer is going to work with you? How long do you think you'll be the agent of choice if you don't prove to your buyer that you know more about the process and buying a house than they do? So I will share with you, you have to be super knowledgeable. You have to be super smart because they have Google. And now you got to impress upon them. I'll give you a hack that I use personally, Nazar, is whenever I meet a new client, I purposefully, whether buyer or seller, will share 2 to 3 things I know they don't know, that they can't find on Google easily, or they're not researching. And this is no joke. It's not hyperbole. And I'm not trying to impress any of you guys on my skills, but I will share with you more times than not, Nazar. After I do this, the consumer looks at me and says, wow, you're so smart. We're glad we found you. Because why? I'm creating differentiation. The other 9 agents didn't give them that information, right? It didn't feel the same, but because I was super knowledgeable about what they were trying to do, and they felt like I knew more than them, they felt like they better stick with me because I was what? Adding value to their process. You want to write this down? Your success in real estate will be directly proportional to the amount of value you provide to your clients. Nazar, how much value is it in unlocking a door? Not much, right? And this is part of the reason you see these commission rates, especially on the buy side, slipping and slipping. Because if you're just unlocking a door and writing an offer, that is that much value. And your consumer doesn't see you as the agent of choice, I will tell you. If you could provide them with a heck of a lot of information and knowledge that they don't have, that's providing value. That's improving their experience and their process. You'll do a lot better. So get smarter. That's my advice. So responsiveness, get smarter. Number 3. This is all to build trust. Remember, you have to do these 3 things extremely well in this environment, or you will not have nearly as many sales. You have to be transparent. Create transparency. And by transparency, I'll share some of the things you could do is give them a little a view into the future of all the things that'll need to happen in a transaction. Give them some transparency on how they need to perform. Give them transparency on how you communicate, how you work, right? Spell it out. My real estate team back east used to have something called the roadmap to success. And we would show the consumer exactly the 10 steps that were required to purchase a home in our market. And what happened? I was creating certainty, because first-time home buyers don't know all the steps, right? This is not easily found on the internet. And the average consumer, as you guys probably know, if they're buying more after their first home, it's 7 to 10 years. They don't remember. So the first thing I want to do when I meet a client, I said, let me show you what's required. Let me show you the steps to buy a home in today's market. And it creates certainty, because now they're not walking into the abyss, right? Kind of with this anxiety. The more certainty you can create, the more trust they'll have in you. So share everything. This is like one of the reasons like sites like Zillow became so popular back in the day, because they were more transparent with all the information about houses than most brokerages are. So the consumer said, I want transparency, right? And they went for it. They control nearly half of all the real estate traffic now. Why? Because they're more transparent. Even today, Nazar, I just did this yesterday. I went on Zillow site and I went on like a brokerage's site, and there's twice as much information. They're so much more transparent. Like this one site, they sent me a listing, price reduction. You know what? They don't tell me how much the price reduction was. They didn't tell me what the previous price was, right? It just says house reduced. So don't you think I would want to know as a buyer, did they reduce it 5,000 or 50,000? That'll show me how motivated they are, right, on there. If I go to Zillow site, they'll tell me all the prices, how much the price reductions are, when they happen. So transparency is much more important than you think. The consumer craves it desperately. So transparency, responsiveness, and knowledge. If you can impress that upon your next lead as quickly as you can when you meet with them, trust will go through the roof, and you will cut down your ghosting, you'll increase your loyalty, and you will sell more homes. Did I bark enough?
Mike, that was awesome. Thank you so much. I think that, you know, as salespeople, we do sometimes think it's all about sales, but it really is all about relationships.
Correct.
You know, and that's why most of our transactions are done through our sphere, because they naturally, you know, that's a natural process, right? But when you're dealing with leads, when you're dealing with people that don't know you, which is obviously a bigger group of people, from the people that you do know, and you want to be able to sell more homes, you have to tap into that market of people that don't know you. And so half the battle is just getting them to know, like, and trust you. And then the rest of it's just simple. It's just easy.
You nailed it. I couldn't have said it better myself. So you know what I would say to everyone on the call? Yeah, just go do it. There's no rocket science. It's really that easy, I would tell you. If you focus more on just building relationships and try to sell and all that other stuff, you will enjoy this business so much more. Your clients will love you so much more, and you will make so much more money. Stop selling and build relationships, folks.
That's it. Mike, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you.
Love to share.
All right, you guys.
Bye-bye.
For sure. Bye.
Thank you, Mike. Good to see you again.